the steel screamed. Not a shriek, not a whine, but a deep, guttural groan that resonated in your bones, a symphony of tortured metal protesting against the relentless assault of the sea. The deck bucked beneath my boots, a disobedient horse trying to throw its rider. Rain, thick as syrup and just as cold, plastered my face, blurring the world into a watercolor of gray and black. Each wave was a leviathan, rising from the inky depths, a towering wall of water threatening to swallow us whole. Then the crash. A deafening roar as the wave broke over the bow, sending a cascade of frigid water slamming against the bridge windows. For a moment, everything went white. Just the roar and the blinding spray. Then, slowly, the world reformed, the destroyer shaking itself like a wet dog, throwing off the excess water before plunging back into the trough. My hand tightened on the railing, knuckles white against the cold steel. The wind, a howling banshee, tore at my clothes, trying to rip me from my precarious perch. Salty spray stung my eyes, blurring my vision even further. I could taste the ocean, a metallic tang that coated my tongue and filled my lungs. It was a taste of danger, of exhilaration, of the raw power of nature unleashed. The ship shuddered again, a deep vibration that ran through my entire body. We were dancing on the edge of oblivion, a fragile metal box battling the fury of a god. And I, a small, insignificant piece of that machine, was standing watch. The green glow of the radar screen was the only constant in the swirling chaos. A hypnotic pulse against the darkness, a silent promise of vigilance. It painted a picture of the world around us, a world hidden by the storm, a world teeming with unseen dangers. I scanned the screen, my eyes darting across the blips and lines, searching for anything out of the ordinary. A rogue wave, a lost fishing boat, a silent submarine lurking beneath the waves. Anything. Everything. My breath hitched in my throat. The feeling of isolation was overwhelming. Just me, the ship, and the endless, unforgiving ocean. The memory hit me like a rogue wave of its own, a sudden, unexpected surge of emotion that threatened to drown me in nostalgia. It was the smell of salt air, the taste of the sea, the feeling of being utterly alone, yet inextricably connected to something larger than myself. It transported me back to my grandfather's weathered hands, calloused and strong, holding mine as we stood on the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. He was a sailor, a man of the sea, and he had filled my childhood with tales of faraway lands and daring adventures. He had taught me to respect the ocean, to fear its power, but also to love its beauty and its mystery. He'd always said, "The sea is a harsh mistress, boy. She'll test you, break you, try to swallow you whole. But if you respect her, if you learn her ways, she'll also reward you. She'll show you things you never thought possible. She'll teach you about yourself." I remember the crinkle of his eyes as he smiled, the salt-laced wind whipping his gray hair around his face. He looked as weathered and timeless as the rocks that lined the shore. He was the sea incarnate, a living embodiment of its strength and resilience. I had scoffed then, a young boy eager to play, but now, standing on the bridge of a destroyer in the middle of a storm, his words echoed in my ears with a newfound resonance. He'd given me his old compass, a heavy brass thing that felt warm and solid in my hand. It was more than just a navigational tool, it was a link to him, a connection to the past. I kept it locked away in my footlocker, a tangible reminder of his presence, a silent guide in the darkest of nights. I imagined him now, standing beside me, his hand resting on my shoulder, his voice whispering in my ear. "Hold steady, son. Weather the storm. You're stronger than you think." The thought brought a small smile to my face, a flicker of warmth in the cold, unforgiving night. The compass, the memory of his steady gaze, and the feel of his hand on my shoulder were enough. I was not alone. I was carrying him with me, across the endless ocean, through the raging storm. He was the anchor that held me steady, the guiding light that kept me on course. And I, his grandson, would not falter. The radio crackled again, a garbled message about a possible contact, direction unknown. But the squawks seemed to cut through the storm's roar, injecting a fresh dose of adrenaline. We were no longer just enduring, we were hunting. Or being hunted. The thought was a cold splash against my fear-numbed face. Then it happened. A wave, unlike any that had come before, slammed into the ship. Not a gradual rise and fall, but a solid wall of water that felt like concrete. I remember bracing, feeling the deck tilt impossibly, the world a sickening blur of gray and white. I gripped the railing until my knuckles screamed, convinced we were going over. Going under. And then silence. A surreal, temporary calm after the brutal assault. The ship righted itself slowly, groaning under the strain. For a moment I thought we'd made it. I looked over at Miller, his face pale, but he gave a weak thumbs up. Relief, fragile and fleeting, bloomed in my chest. That's when I saw it. A figure, dangling precariously over the edge of the deck, clinging to a loose cable. It was Jones. The wave must have ripped him from his post. He was struggling, his grip weakening with each passing second, the churning sea a hungry maw below. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. My mind screamed at me to move, to do something, anything. But my legs felt like lead, frozen in place by a paralyzing fear. I saw Miller start to move, to reach for Jones, but he was too far away, the deck still slick with seawater. Jones looked up, his eyes wide with terror, a silent plea etched on his face. Our eyes met, and in that instant I saw my own fear reflected back at me. I saw the certainty of death, the utter helplessness of our situation. And then, his grip failed. He disappeared over the side, swallowed by the raging sea. A scream, cut short, was the last I heard of him. The ocean roared on, indifferent to the life it had just claimed. Miller stood there, frozen, his outstretched hand reaching for nothing but empty air. I remained rooted to the spot, a silent witness to a tragedy I could have prevented. Should have prevented. The guilt washed over me, colder and more relentless than the storm itself. The rest of that watch is a blur. We reported Jones's disappearance, of course. Protocol demanded it. But the words felt hollow, meaningless in the face of his absence. The search was brief, perfunctory. No one truly believed they would find him alive in those conditions. They didn't. The storm eventually subsided, the sea calmed, and the sun emerged, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. But the beauty was lost on me. All I could see was Jones's face, his eyes pleading, his body disappearing into the unforgiving depths. Years have passed since that night. The destroyer is long decommissioned, a rusting hulk in some forgotten shipyard. I went on to serve my time, received my discharge, and tried to build a life for myself. But the sea, the storm, Jones, they never truly left me. I still see him in my dreams, dangling over the edge, his eyes locked on mine. I wake up in a cold sweat, the sound of the waves crashing in my ears, the taste of salt on my lips. I try to tell myself that there was nothing I could have done, that the storm was too strong, the odds too stacked against us. But the voice of reason is drowned out by the relentless whisper of guilt. I avoid the ocean now. Can't stand the sight of it, the smell of it, the sound of it. It's a constant reminder of my failure, of the life I couldn't save. My wife, Sarah, tries to understand, but how can she? How can anyone who wasn't there, who didn't see what I saw, feel what I felt? Sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I find myself staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of that night in my head, searching for a different outcome, a way to change the past. But the past is immutable, a fixed point in time that I can never escape. I've tried therapy, medication, anything to quiet the demons that haunt me. They help to a degree. They allow me to function, to go through the motions of daily life. But they can't erase the memory, can't heal the wound that festers deep within my soul. I've become withdrawn, distant. Sarah says I'm not the same man she married. She's right. The sea took more than just Jones that night. It took a part of me, a part of my soul, and left a void that can never be filled. I often wonder what Jones would have become. Would he have married, had children, lived a long and happy life? Or would he have been haunted by the sea as well? I'll never know. All I know is that his life was cut short, his potential unrealized, and I bear the weight of that loss every single day. The nightmares are less frequent now, the flashbacks less intense. But the guilt remains, a constant companion, a shadow that follows me wherever I go. I've learned to live with it, to accept it as part of who I am. But it's a heavy burden to carry, a reminder of the night I stood watch on a destroyer in rough seas and failed to save a man's life. And that, I fear, is a burden I will carry for the rest of my days. The storm broke not with a sudden clap of thunder, but with a slow, agonizing sigh. The waves, spent from their furious dance, subsided into long, rolling swells, their white caps fading like ghosts in the pre-dawn gloom. The destroyer, battered but unbowed, continued its relentless journey eastward. On the bridge, a palpable exhaustion hung in the air, thick and heavy like the sea mist clinging to the windows. I remained at my post, the taste of salt and fear still sharp on my tongue. The digital clock glowed an eerie green, 0530. Almost sunrise. Almost relief. I glanced at Captain Reynolds. His face, etched with fatigue, was turned towards the horizon. He looked older somehow, the weight of command settling heavier on his shoulders. I wondered what he was thinking, what ghosts he battled in the quiet hours of the night. Then he spoke, his voice barely a whisper above the hum of the engines. He wouldn't have wanted it any other way, you know. I didn't need him to elaborate. I knew he was talking about Miller. About the sacrifice. About the unyielding spirit that had burned so brightly, even in the face of oblivion. He was a good man, Captain, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Reynolds nodded slowly. The best. They all are. The best we have. The first sliver of sun pierced the eastern horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and fiery gold. It was a fragile beauty, a stark contrast to the brutal reality we had just endured. As the light strengthened, I noticed something bobbing in the water, a dark shape rising and falling with the swells. I grabbed my binoculars, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a life raft. And in it, huddled beneath a tattered piece of canvas, was a single figure. Captain, life raft sighted! Bearing 090. One survivor! I shouted, the adrenaline surging back into my veins. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos. Orders were barked, the ship shuddered as it changed course, and the rescue team sprang into action. As we drew closer, I could make out the figure in the raft more clearly. It was a young man, his face gaunt and pale, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. And then I saw it. The patch on his shoulder. The insignia. He was one of them. A survivor from the enemy vessel. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. Anger. Resentment. And, surprisingly, pity. He was just a kid, caught in the same storm, the same brutal game of survival. He was no different from Miller, from any of us. The rescue team pulled him aboard, his body trembling with cold and exhaustion. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and gratitude. I met his gaze, and for a moment, we were just two human beings, connected by the shared experience of survival, stripped bare of ideology and allegiance. Later, as the ship steamed towards port, I found myself standing on the deck, watching the sunrise. The storm was gone, but the memory of it, and the faces of those we had lost, would remain etched in my mind forever. The sea, once a symbol of terror and chaos, now seemed strangely peaceful, almost serene. I thought of Miller, of his laughter, his courage, his unwavering dedication. He had given his life so that others might live, a sacrifice that transcended the boundaries of war and conflict. And I realized that the true meaning of our duty wasn't just about defending our country, but about protecting the shared humanity that bound us all together, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. The sunrise deepened, bathing the ship in a warm, golden light. It was a new day, a new beginning. And as I stood there, watching the horizon, I knew that I would never forget the lessons I had learned in the heart of the storm. The sea had tested me, broken me, and ultimately made me stronger. And I knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within my soul, that I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The watch was over. But the journey had just begun.